columnist John McClain. John, I got to tell you this. I thought about this when I was watching the Texans and Rams, 14-9. I hurt myself. Personally, I physically felt like I was sore after watching that game. It wasn't pretty, but my goodness, they beat the hell out of each other.
They did, because both teams have real good defenses, especially defensive lines. And Texans had summer problems last year, struggled with the offensive line. They had 5 new ones. Then they had an injury. They made 3 position changes. And C.J. Stroud was under pressure 41% of the time, which I think was the 5th most in the league. Only thing encouraging I saw, besides a few passes by him, was running back Nick Chubb, who averaged 4.6 yards on 14 carries. Nico Collins, they had to put him on the side of a milk carton to try to find him, because the Rams did a great job to shut him down, which the Texans could not do to Puka Nacua. Texans worked to shut down the Rams running game. They did. Anytime a defense gives up 2 touchdowns in the NFL, they ought to have a chance to win the game. Texans' offensive line still had a lot of issues. They had too many penalties. Collins only had 3 catches for average about 8 yards. But all that said, Texans had the ball. They completed the pass to backup running back Dari Gumbawali, got to the 18. This was about a minute left. Boom, he fumbles. Ball got knocked out on a great play by one of the Rams linebackers. Game over. And now the Texans host Tampa Bay on Monday night. Tampa Bay coming off a victory at Atlanta. Baker Mayfield threw 3 touchdown passes, and that line went from 2.5 to 1. It wouldn't surprise me by the time it gets here, the Buccaneers are not favored in that game.
John, got the news on Jalen Carter. He has already served his punishment, basically. He's going to have to dole out a little bit of money, but they counted him as having basically been suspended for that last game. Is that what you expected to happen? And is that, I guess, now the precedent has been set if something like that were to happen again?
Well, really, he only was in there a little bit in the first game. So it's like, he's kicked out of that game. Then he's kicked out of this one, and that cost him a week's check of $57,000. I don't think Jalen Carter will be spitting on anybody anymore. Then that trickled down to Florida and cost them again. I saw him issue an apology to everybody but God today. And I don't know if that's a thing. They say things come in threes, but that's sure an ugly, ugly thing. And I'll tell you, I was in Dallas. We didn't go to the game, but we were having a Baylor watch party at the home of one of my closest friends, Tony Peterson. Grew up in Belmead, got me hired at the Trib and at the Chronicle in Houston, and put me on the Oilers. And Tony worked as an editor of the Chronicle forever, and he just retired as head of communications at SMU. So he had about 12 or 13 Baylor fans up there, and we were sweating in what was absolutely fabulous weather, like everybody else was. And now Sawyer Robertson, the toast of the country, as he should be. I saw on 3, which I have a lot of respect for. List top 10 quarterbacks didn't include him. And I thought, man, you guys are knuckleheads or you're not paying attention, because the guy's been fabulous. And if you go back to that LSU loss to the Texas Bowl, did he hit 400 in that game, or was the high 3?
No, he did. He's had 3 straight 400-yard games, including that game in Houston. And
he has been fabulous. He ran a little more against the Mustangs. And I still, as someone who grew up with Waco Southwest Conference, I still have a hard time when Baylor is an underdog and upsets the Mustangs. But the fact is, SMU was ranked and Baylor wasn't. I thought it was interesting the way SMU puts Dallas on its uniform and 214 on its helmet. It's like it wants everybody to know what city it's in, instead of having Mustangs or SMU. And that was, to me, one of the greatest games, one of the best comebacks I've seen from Baylor. And it's not many teams get their first lead in overtime, but you can imagine how everybody celebrated, and it was a fun time. And then now I know they play Sanford, but can't wait for the Arizona State game. I watched Arizona State lose.
Yep.
And an incredible comeback with a Mississippi State by Blake Shapen. So it was a good day for current or former Baylor quarterbacks.
Had you been up to SMU before?
We didn't go to the game. We watched it we had a watch party.
Gotcha.
So no, I wasn't one of the 32,000 or whatever they have there. But yeah, I got up at Saturday morning. It's 65 degrees up there, and I thought we're not going to have that in Houston until November. It turned out to be a perfect day for football. And the reason we all didn't go, we thought it was going to be too hot, and we should have gone. But yeah, we were celebrating like crazy, just like everybody else is. And congratulations to David Landon and everybody associated with the Baylor program.
Yeah, no, that was an absolutely huge win. I don't know what their defense is going to be the rest of the way, John. I don't know what the running game is going to look like, but they have an elite passing offense. That crew of wide receivers, Sawyer is really good, but he's got some really nice targets that he's working with this year as well.
So I think the running game will come around. Washington had 100 yards. If you take away that long 50-yard run, which they did in the Auburn game, those stats would look a whole lot better. But the way he's spreading the ball around, every time I'm watching Baylor, I'm screaming, get the ball to Josh Cameron.
Yeah.
He is an NFL receiver. He breaks tackles. He gets yards after the catch. And he's going to start getting a lot of attention, but it's obvious they're loaded at receiver. And I feel better, Craig, about getting the running game going than I do the defense, which means they're due to have a lot of pass-happy, exciting games with exciting finishes like SMU.
Yeah, I think Shootout Ball is back for sure. For this year's team, at least, they're definitely going to be a team that's trying to score a lot of points and probably in a lot of high-scoring games. Now, you mentioned talking about Sawyer, and he's got some NFL aspirations, and a lot of people talking about him after this weekend. But speaking of quarterback play, young and old, the NFL couldn't have designed the schedule any better. On Sunday night, closing out the full week, or closing out the main weekend with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen in this incredible Buffalo victory. And then last night, Caleb Williams and the Bears, and then J.J. McCarthy and the incredible comeback there at the end to give the Vikings the win. So a little old, a little new, but two incredible games. They couldn't have chalked it up much better, I don't think, John, on the schedule.
Well, you go back to the Thursday night game.
Yep.
I think Cowboy fans should be very encouraged by that performance. And I'm surprised that a lot of people nationally are surprised that Dak Prescott had a good game. Dak played great. CeeDee Lamb acted like he never caught a football again, or they'd pulled an upset. And I'd be very encouraged if I were a Cowboy fan. So all those games starting Thursday night, there were so many nail biters, but we may have seen the game of the year in the first game of the year. And I can't imagine any being more exciting. There may be a lot that'll go down to the wire, settled in overtime, but 41-40, that's a college score.
Oh, my God.
And it was two great quarterbacks, and there's not, right now, even Philadelphia, if you just go off this one weekend, nobody's in the class of the Bills and the Ravens.
I was going to go to bed because it looked like Baltimore, kind of had at least what they needed. But when Josh Allen's in the game and he can throw it 65 yards in a dart, but what an unbelievable game. It really was. That had everything. And to have that on a Sunday night, I thought you mentioned Cowboys and Eagles was an entertaining game. I didn't get to watch it because I was doing high school football. So 49ers, Purdy's not 100%. Kittle is out for an extended amount of time. Your thoughts about it? They seem to be able, like the Rams and 49ers, do a pretty good job of overcoming injuries no matter what.
Well, it's easier for the Rams because they have a better quarterback, a more experienced quarterback in Matthew Stafford, and they have more balance. The 49ers made a lot of changes this season. I thought Seattle would beat them, and they go up there and win a defensive struggle. It was close. Sam Darnold didn't play as well as he did for Minnesota last year in regular season. The quarterback they let go, Geno Smith, with Chip Kelly, had 9 completions of more than 20 yards for the Raiders when they went to New England and beat a team everybody thought was going to be the most improved in the league. And the 49ers that's a bad way to start. Get your quarterback hurt right off the bat. Kittle's he's got to be gone he'll probably be out 4 to 6 weeks. And that's a tough thing to overcome because he's really their best receiver because he's been their healthiest. Brandon Ayuk is injured. They just have so many injuries on that team. So good coaching can only overcome so much.
What has happened to, Craig, what has happened to the bloom off the rose of Mike McDaniel?
Isn't it interesting? They went to the playoffs in his first 2 years, 22-23, and they were a creative, innovative offense built around the passing game with Tua Tagovailoa. They had double-headed monsters, running back, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and receiver. Tyreek Hill, I think I saw, hasn't had a 30-yard catch since the first game of last year. Now his wife's claiming he beat her up 8 different times. She's suing him. I think he had 4 new kids last year, I read. He doesn't even know how many kids he's got. He's in double figures, I think. They're talking about him being traded. Who would want him with all his baggage? You know, he'd have to have porters to help him carry those bags. So they got problems. Everybody's saying Mike McDaniel's on the hottest seat. You go into Indy and let Indy score on every series with Daniel Jones. They Tua Tagovailoa looked scared in the pocket. He was awful, and the defense had no fire, and that reflects on the coaching. So remember after last season, I can't remember who the player was, basically said they were soft, and that is never good for a coach to hear that. But I think he's a dead man walking.
There are coaches in the NFL, because it is, my goodness, such an intense league, and what have you done for me lately, that get fired early on. What's the earliest you can remember a head coach being fired? Was it 2-3 weeks? The rule didn't last long in Carolina his last year. What's the fastest you remember a coach being shown the door?
Boy, David, I'd have to think of that one. They're several rare, but you see one fired first 2 or 3 weeks because the team looks terrible and lifeless. You know, if it's not putting out the effort, that's when you got to think seriously about getting rid of coach. And it's happened before, but it's just unusual.
I looked it up on Reddit. The earliest a coach has been fired. Now they mentioned Lane Kiffin and Dennis Allen as a couple of names, but I don't know if that's the
Mike
case.
Shanahan was fired after an 2004, I think. No, Al Davis got mad at him and fired him early in the season. I remember Dennis Allen when he got fired. I can't remember about Lane Kiffin, another Raiders casualty, who got crossways with Al Davis.
Here's one, and I know you got to go. In 1978, George Allen came back to the Rams after he was with the Rams in Washington. And in 1978, he was brought back to be let go before the season began because of upheaval of the players in preseason. Wow. I don't remember that. That's a long time ago.
And he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yes. Thank you, John. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. Second Bears.
That's John McClain, Hall